day, students. Welcome to Basic Science Lessons. In our lesson today, we'll be looking at activities of living things. Activities of living things. Activities of living things. And you remembered in our last class, we looked at living things. And we said living things are those things that have life in them. And we said living things are grouped into plants and animals. And in our previous class, we were able to consider human being as an animal, and then we look at importance of plants and animals to humans and importance of animals to humans. So in our class today we'll be looking at activities of living things. Types of activities of living things. Types of activities of living things. Living things do the following activities, and these are things that living things do that no living things don't. Number 1, movement. Movement. Movement is a change in position. When a living thing changes in position, that is called movement. 2, feeding. Living things feed on food, and food is a substance which when taken provides energy or materials for building the body. So any substance that when it's taken, it gives the body energy, and it also provides material for building the body, is known as food. Feeding means taking food into the body. So feeding is the process by which food is taken into the body, and all living things feed. Respiration. Respiration is made up of 2 parts. One part of respiration is breathing. It involves taking air in and out of the body. So respiration is made up of 2 parts. The first part is the usual breathing, and breathing is taking in of air in and out of the body. And usually we said animals take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide, while plants take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. This is one part of respiration. The other part is the use of oxygen in the air breathed in to react with digested food substance in the body. This process, which takes place in all living cells, provides energy. So after the air is taken in, that's the oxygen. In terms of animals, when the oxygen is taken into the body, the oxygen is then in turn used to react with the digested food in the body to release energy, and this takes place in the living cell. That's the other part of respiration. So apart from breathing, taking in and out of air, then we have the air again reacting with the food substance that have been taken into the body to further break them down so that energy can be released, and this activity occurs in the living cell. That is the other part of respiration. Activity number 4, excretion. 4, excretion. Remember, we talk about movement, we talk about feeding, and we looked at respiration. Number 4 is excretion. Excretion is the removal of waste product of the working of the body. Excretion is the removal of waste products of the working of the body. In most cases, it's the removal of waste product of metabolism. So anytime there's a function in the body, and that function in the body results production of waste product, by the time these waste products are removed of the body, you call it excretion. It is not the removal of feces, because feces is not a product of metabolism. It's not a product of working of the body, but the removal of waste product formed mainly from respiration. So excretion is the removal of waste product formed mainly from respiration. Growth. Number 5, growth. Growth involves increase in size as a result of formation of new cells and increase in size of the new cells. So when an individual or when a living thing increase in size because of formation of new cells in the body of that individual, and because of increase in size of those new cells, growth is said to have been taking place. So growth involves increase in size as a result of formation of new cells and increase in size of new cells. So the major factor of growth is formation of new cells. That is why size is increased because we have new cells that are formed in the body of the living things, and when these new cells that are formed also increase in size, the body size of the individual or of the living thing increases and it is said to have grown. Number 6, sensitivity. Sensitivity. Sensitivity is the ability to respond to changes in the environment. Sensitivity is the ability to respond to changes in the environment. When an organism responds to a change in the environment, that is called sensitivity. It could be changed due to pain, due to heat, due to temperature, and so on. Number 7, reproduction. Reproduction. Reproduction is the production of new individuals of the same type. Reproduction is the production of new individuals of the same type. When living things give birth to young ones of their own kind, they are said to have reproduced. So the process of giving birth to young ones of our own kind is called reproduction. It's called reproduction. Movement as the first activity. So we have looked at the activities of living things, and living things carry out 7 activities: movement, feeding, respiration, excretion, growth, sensitivity, and reproduction. These are the 7 activities of living things. And then mostly it is abbreviated by an abbreviation, Mr. Niger D. The D stands for death. Every living thing have a definite lifespan. Mr. Niger D. So the M stands for movement, the R stands for respiration, the N stands for nutrition, which is also feeding, the I stands for irritability, which is also called sensitivity, the G stands for growth, the E stands for excretion, and the R stands for reproduction, and the D stands for death. So that's a simple way to decode the activities of living things. What we are having now is movement. Movement as one of the activities of living things. Movement. In living things, there are different types of movement. In living things, there are different types of movement. Remember, we say movement is one of the activities of living things. And in living things, there are different types of movement. Number 1, active movement occurs when a living thing moves by its own energy. Active movement is the type of movement that occurs when a living thing moves by its own energy. It is not carried by anything. Number 2, passive movement occurs when a living thing is carried by wind or water or animals from one place to another, e.g., small water plants. So passive movement is the opposite of active movement, when a living thing is carried by wind or water or animals from one place to another. You call it passive movement. Number 3, bending movement occurs in plants which bend toward light, water, or gravity. So bending movement mostly occur in plants because plants don't move from one place to another. They only bend part of their body towards an external stimuli, which could be light, which could be water, or gravity. Thus, they can move towards a source of light, towards source of water, or towards gravity. So we have 3 types of movement. Number 1, active movement. Number 2, passive movement. Number 3, bending movement. The active movement, we said the organism moves by its own energy from one place to another. The passive movement, the organism is being carried by water, wind, or animals from one place to another. And the bending movement, the organism moves in response to an external stimuli. Purpose of movement. Purpose of movement. Reasons why living things move are listed below. There are reasons that make living things to move from one place to another. Number 1, to obtain food. To obtain food, that's the number 1 reason. Living things can move from one place to another in search of food. A, carnivores, e.g., the lion chase their prey. So you see that lions chase their prey in order to obtain their food. B, herbivores move to their feeding places. Cattle, sheep, and goats, they graze from one place to another to search for pasture. 2, to avoid bad weather. to avoid bad weather. Birds migrate from Europe to Africa when it is winter in Europe. So you see birds carry out a migration movement. They will leave Europe. They will leave Europe to Africa when it is winter in Europe, because that weather is not favorable for their survival. Then B, birds and squirrels seek shelter when it is raining. So the animals can seek shelter when it is raining. Even human beings seek shelter when it is raining. When you are walking outside and it is raining, you run inside the house. You run inside the house. Then number 3, to respond to change in the environment. That's the next reason, to respond to changes in the environment. Number 1, we say is to obtain food, and we gave example of the movement. Number 2, we say to avoid bad weather, and we gave example of animals that move to avoid bad weather. Number 3, to respond to change in the environment. The example is a dog will move and bark when it sees a stranger. When you enter a house that is not your own, a stranger in that house, if there are dogs there, as the dogs are barking, they are moving backward. Then number B, if a needle pierces your hand, you will move away the hand. If you're sewing, you come in contact with a needle and that needle pierces your hand, you see yourself quickly moving away your hand. Or if you're cooking and you have to touch the handle of the pot that is hot, you see your hand quickly moving away from that handle, because the changes in the environment is not favorable. Number 4, to escape from enemies or danger. To escape from enemies or danger. That's the 4th reason why living things move. A, deer run away from snakes. Deer run away from snakes. Even human beings run away from snakes. B, human beings run away from fire. Dangerous. Human beings run away from fire. Number 5, to seek reproductive mates or sites. To seek reproductive mates or sites. A, cock runs after hens. The animals move to either seek their mates or to seek a site, a place that is favorable for them. Cocks run after hens. This one is seeking reproductive mates. B, male lizard pursue female lizard. That's another seeking for reproductive mate. Then C, fishes swim to where they lay eggs. That is looking for or seeking for reproductive sites. So the animal swims to where they can lay their eggs. So we have number 1, to obtain food. Number 2, to avoid bad weather. Number 3, to respond to change in the environment. Number 4, to escape from enemies or danger. Number 5, to seek reproductive mates or sites. This is why organs of movement. Organs of movement. We're going to look at type of living things, organs of movement, and method of movement. Type of living things, organ of movement, and method of movement. The first one there is human being. Human being. Organs of movement in human beings are legs, feet, and arms. Legs, feet, and arms. The method of movement is walking. Walking. Number 2, birds and bats. Birds and bats. Organs, wings and legs. And the method of movement is flying. Number 3, reptiles. Reptiles. Example is snake, lizard. Reptiles, crocodiles, they are all under reptiles. Snake, lizard, crocodiles, they are under reptiles. Organs of movement, belly, fore and hind limbs. Belly, in terms of snakes, they crawl with their belly. And then fore and hind limbs. Fore and hind limbs, like crocodiles, they have fore and hind limbs. The front leg and the back leg. The front leg is the forelimb and the back leg is the hind limb. Then the method of movement is crawling in slow motion. Crawling in slow motion. Running in fast motion. So they can crawl in slow motion. They can run in fast motion. 4. Toads/frogs. Toads/frogs. Organs of movement, fore and hind limbs. Fore and hind limbs. And the method of movement is jumping. Number 5, fish. And fish use the tails and the fins. Tail and fins. And the method of movement is swimming. Uses tail for moving, fins for balancing, tail fin for steering. So the swimming can be done using the tail, using the fin, and using the tail fin. The tail is used for moving, the fins are used for balancing, and the tail fin is used for steering. Number 6, insects. And the insects use the wings and the legs. Wings and the legs are the organs of movement. And the method of movement is flying and walking. Flying and walking. Number 7, plants. And then organs, none. Plants don't have an organ of movement. And then the method of movement is bending of stem towards light, bending of roots towards water, and gravity. Remember we said plants carry out a bending type of movement, which they can bend towards gravity, water, or light. So they bend their stems towards light and their roots towards water and gravity. And with that, we have come to the end of activities of living things. Remember, we say activities of living things are also called characteristics of living things. And living things carry out 7 activities, which we give a short abbreviation, calling it Mr. Niger D. Movement, respiration, nutrition, which is also called feeding, irritability, which is called sensitivity, growth, excretion, and then we have reproduction, and the D is death. And then we're able to look at movement. We say movement is a change in position of the living thing. And we say movement can be passive, can be active, or can be bending. When an organism moves by its own energy, you call it active movement. When they are carried by water, wind, you call it passive movement. And when the living thing bends parts of its body in response to external stimuli, it is known as bending movement. And then we move on to look at reasons why living things move from one place to another. We have 5 reasons. Number 1, we say to obtain food. Number 2, to avoid bad weather. Number 3, to respond to changes in the environment. Number 4, to escape from enemies or danger. And number 5, to seek reproductive mates or sites. And lastly, we look at organs of movement. And we look at the different organisms and the organs of movement and the methods of movement. When we meet next, we will look at the other activities of living things. We are only able to discuss movement. So we'll pick the remaining 6 to discuss them one after the other. Have a wonderful day and see you next time. God bless you.